Colors of Politics in RI on RI Free Radio. Just as the rainbow has many colors, there are multiple opinions and views of the way our state government should be run. Let us be to the point and deliver the truth. It is time to break down the colors of politics.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming and tuning in to another episode of Colors of Politics on RI Free Radio. Find us on Facebook and Twitter at symbol Colors of RI. We love to hear from you and your ideas, so don't forget to shoot us a message if you'd love for us to interview or check into a topic. And tonight, we have Adam Kokesh from Arizona, and he's going to talk to us about a couple of different topics, including his Freedom book. But he's going to start with letting us know about his new campaign that he announced a couple of months ago and what he's up to. Hello, Adam, and thank you for coming on.
Hey, really appreciate it, Amy. Thanks for the opportunity. Although I got to say, we haven't technically announced yet. We are still in exploratory mode, but everything is proceeding according to plan. Kokesh for not president is happening, and as long as the momentum continues to build, I am running for president in Excuse me, I'm sorry. That's such a terribly anti-freedom, unlibertarian thing to say. I'm running for not president. There, that's better. I'm running for not president. That is, I am running on the platform of a peaceful, orderly dissolution of the entire United States federal government. And it's such an exciting platform. It's such a solution as big as the problem. And the way that people are just taking to this idea, 3+ years in advance now is really exciting to see how this change could happen so soon. Although I have to say, I don't want to promise that I'm going to win in 2020. It might not be we might not be at that tipping point of the paradigm shift just yet. But not only will I run until the federal government ceases to exist, but I am very confident that is inevitable. It's just a matter of how. And it might not happen through a political campaign such as this. It might happen through secession. Even California wants to secede now, which is great. Let them have their own, Socialist Republic of California and see how that works out. But, obviously, the more local government is, the better it is for the people being governed, at least. Although no one should be governed, we should be free. We should have a nonviolent society rather than a centrally controlled coercive society. And people are waking up to this more and more every single day, faster and faster. And we're getting volunteers signed up on our forums my main site is thefreedomline.com, but you can also go to kokeshfornotpresident.com if you want to remember how to spell my name, Kokesh. People are really excited about this. People want to be a part of this, and it could be that we win on this platform in 2020, but if not, I'm confident 24, 28, or 32 within the next 4 cycles. I really can't imagine it taking it much longer than that. Although if it takes longer, I'll keep running as long as people keep waking up. And I really feel that this is.
So for you, is it the message, the bigger picture, sharing the message and getting more people on board with the philosophy, for lack of a better word at the moment?
Sure. Well, in a sense, the strategy of the campaign is to, in the off year, so 2017, 2018, 2019, be using this as a way to grow the movement of people who understand freedom as a moral or ethical principle of some kind. And then when it comes time for the election year, take whatever we have grown the movement to and direct its efforts towards the general public on the platform of localization. So it really is two things. It's not just the philosophy of nonviolence, applied to government. It's also how we move forward out of this system in a practical way, like I said, peaceful and orderly, but also in a way that doesn't pull the rug out from underneath anyone and makes people's lives better right away. There are some ways that you could do this wrong, where, it would lead to some turmoil, it would lead to some suffering and lack of, lowering of quality of life. And this is in the book, Freedom, which you can get for free at thefreedomline.com, thefreedomline.com, free in every digital format, including audiobook. And what I think is really the most practical section of the book is in chapter 10, localization. We don't want a revolution, we want an evolution. We don't even really need to challenge someone's concept of what government is or should do, only at what scale it should do it. So in the United States, clearly it would be very easy. We eliminate the federal government. We still have major collectives called states that are mostly bigger than the country under the Constitution by population at the signing of the Constitution. So right away we have more responsive, localized government. Although I think what's going to happen, and what I'm favoring in this and what I will be supporting after we abolish the federal government and we get down to states, people are going to go, wow, we took government local this one step from federal to states. Wow, and our incomes have gone up. We are so much more prosperous. We're not dealing with regulations. We don't have to deal with terrorism anymore because we don't have the federal government using its military and State Department and CIA to go and meddle in other countries and make enemies for us. Wow, the world just respects us now. We're more American than we were before. We're more free. Let's do that again. And we're going to see, I think, as soon as things stabilize at the state level, you're going to see some states go, all right, guys, we're going to do it counties now. Yeah, we're going to go down to the counties. And then eventually to the cities, to the communities, to the point where government can be displaced entirely by nonviolent systems. And that's where this is really going. So anyway, I'm sorry, to bring it back to your question, if I may, with just one little other idea to tack on here, is that we don't need everybody to get the philosophy to move forward. We do need to grow the movement to a critical mass where we can sell localization to the general public, where we can show them that is how we move forward. But they don't have to know the destination to move forward. And I think one of the things that's really incumbent upon us as political activists, I mean, I'll call myself a politician if I have to, but maybe I can be a not politician or an anti-politician. I don't know. I'm kind of hoping that, there's matter and anti-matter. There are politicians, there are anti-politicians. I'll be the anti-politician. But, we need to make it easy for people. Like, our job is to make the world a better place, a more just place. It's not to make people study philosophy. And people get the non-aggression principle. It's wrong to initiate force against another person. Like, don't hit, don't steal, don't kill is not unless you have a gun and a badge or a fancy written law behind you or some politician told you to go to the other side of the world and kill people you've never met before. Don't hit, don't steal, don't kill. These are basic moral principles that we just want to, inspire people to sort of elevate in how they think about politics, because taxation is theft. And when you apply those principles to government, you realize government is unethical by definition.
Yes. Okay. Well, yeah, that's a very good way to answer my question. So I would say that I did not use the best word in my question. But that's okay. You did a very good job at answering it. And just as a little side note, as you mentioned your book, also anybody interested in having a hard copy, the Colors of Politics RI Free Radio Studio in West Warwick, we have 3 or 4 copies on site available for anybody that wants to request them. So you can send us a message on Facebook or Twitter, or you can go to rifreeradio.org and contact us in any way. And we have 3 to 4 of the actual physical books in the studio that anybody can request. Now, what is your favorite part of the book as we're talking about the book? Like, I know you just mentioned chapter 10, but...
Yeah, that's easy. It's the part that I wrote when I was in jail, and it's chapter 9, section 4, Happiness Causes Freedom. And when I was in jail, this was for civil disobedience for loading a shotgun in the ironically named Freedom Plaza 2 blocks from the White House. every time a guard came by, and I was in solitary confinement for the first 2 months before I was in jail, every time, a guard would come by for checks or for mail or for food, I would say, hey, excuse me, sir, ma'am. And it was, by the way, I was guarded by females for a while. It was kind of weird. They had females guarding males in the mix. But anyway, I would call them over the door and be like, hey, excuse me, can you come here for a second, please? I need to tell you something. And if you've ever been to jail, as a ward of the state, they have a certain, burden of responsiveness. If you're just saying, excuse me, sir, can you come and talk to me for a second? I need to tell you something. They kind of have an obligation to come to your cell. So I'd call them over, and when they got to the door, I'd say, you are a free, beautiful, independent human being, and you should never let anyone tell you otherwise. Have a nice day. And I had a big smile on my face, and I loved telling them this, and most of them, well, I don't know, maybe it was about 50-50. Half of them were like, oh, thank you very much. Have a good day, Mr. Kokesh. And, the other half were like, harumps, and kind of walked off and going, why is it that the guy on the inside of this cage is happier than I am on the outside? And it was because I had a sense of purpose. I had a sense of emotional freedom like I've never experienced before that, at least. And that's Chapter 9, Section 1, by the way, emotional freedom. But happiness causes freedom. Section 4 was the one that I wrote entirely when I was in jail. And it's about when you embrace emotional freedom, when you really assert dominion over your own mind. When you get past the emotional reactions and you are a healthy body overall, you get to choose your attitude, your outlook, and your demeanor at all times. That's the ultimate freedom to embrace right there, is that emotional freedom, to know that your mind is your own dominion. Now, we all, are susceptible to allowing our emotional reactions or our external influences get the best of us and make us forget that. But and I'm not perfect. I'm not like preaching some from some pedestal. I'm the same as everybody else. I'm just pointing this out because it's such an important fundamental truth, and it really can make your life better to stay present to that simple fact that your frame of mind is your choice, and that's what causes external freedom. The things that create lack of freedom in human relationships, and remember, freedom is what you have when no one is forcing their will on you. So a nonviolent society, a society to be truly free must be entirely nonviolent. Doesn't mean that people don't embrace the right to self-defense, but if they have to defend themselves, it's because they've been violated or threatened in some way at least. So obviously someone's not, sticking to the rules. Someone's freedom has been disrespected in some way at least, or threatened in some way. So this, when you understand this connection between freedom and violence, you go, well, what causes violence? And it's always need. It's always some, as Marshall Rosenberg, who did nonviolent communication, which I highly recommend, said that, every act of aggression is some tragic expression of an unmet need. And when you embrace emotional freedom, you're capable not only of communicating nonviolently, but really at a deeper level having all of your emotional needs met. And when you do that, you tend not to resort to violence. You tend not to turn to government to pretend to solve social problems by, stealing from your neighbors in the name of taxation to do what you want to do with their money. You're able to seek out the nonviolent relationships that are essential to freedom. So that's sort of a philosophical under the hood for me of understanding how, what freedom is beyond, this flashy word or this political thing. It really is about peace, nonviolence, respect of individual human rights, and love.
No, I definitely completely agree with you, and I know in my personal experience through life, and very specifically, most currently the last 2 years, where I have gotten much more actively involved in activism in the State House, bringing things to legislators' attention, trying to lobby for legislation that gives us back rights, and also I campaigned for school committee in my town, and I won. So I'm actually on the school committee. I'm on the school committee now within my town. And so through this process, I learned that basically what you're saying to another level by living through it, that, you know, when you're out there in the limelight and there's lots of judgment made upon you from people that don't really know beyond a couple of words they've read online or something like that, that you make the choice to let what someone else says or does affect you, or you can make you make the choice to let that be their issue that they have, and that does not need to change your emotional moment. And you can choose to address it to help them feel better about it, but it doesn't need to make you angry or mad or even sad. You make the choice of how it affects you.
Yeah.
So I completely agree with your statement there, and and me having much more personal experience with it on a bigger level myself the last 2 years. So off of me and back onto you. How did your tour go? What was it, like 32 days or something you did, or?
Oh no, it was twice that, but it was amazing. We hit all of our stops. It was about 60 stops in 2 months. So an event almost every single day. I mean, really intense breakneck pace, and every event really was amazing. Every event was an improvement over the year before, and most were between 2 and 3 times the size for attendance. And it's not huge, you know. We're a small movement, but if we double every year, we're going to be on pace for, you know, something pretty awesome. You know, we're making the change that we want to see within the next few years, or at least, you know, if we get to that critical mass within a decade, you know, it's not going to be long before we're really able to leverage that and you know, put our weight behind the kind of massive political change that we're looking for, at least that I'm looking for: localization and eventual complete abolition of the state entirely, and the establishment of a nonviolent society. It's amazing to be able to be alive and to be on the brink of that. I'm sorry. So anyway, about the tour, yeah, we got volunteers at every stop. Like, it was just, it was the exploratory tour, and, you know, overall it was a great success. So we are full speed ahead. I'm planning on announcing, going out of exploratory mode in, probably in May. And at that point, we will have a volunteer coordinator for all 50 states, and for, I'm hoping all, but if not very close to all, 435 congressional districts. And that's what we're working on organizing behind the scenes right now.
That's great. That's actually quicker than I thought you were going to say your estimate was. And so what area of the country do you feel like welcomed the message the largest in your last tour? Like, did you have a particular state that really seemed to increase significant attendance, or did you feel like just significantly more welcomed in any particular portion of the country?
Well, let me see. I got my map in front of me here, actually. I'm sitting in the Freedomobile trailer right now. And I don't want to really leave anybody out, so I kind of want to go through the entire country and talk about where there are pockets, at least a few that stand out. Going up the West Coast from here, Seattle is, I guess, really the first pocket where you have a really strong freedom movement there, and it's very well centered around the Libertarian Party. Idaho really surprised me. We had a great turnout in Boise this year. Vegas, strong Libertarian Party again, was great. Utah, Salt Lake City was great. Then let's see, Denver is always got a great activist community, a lot of libertarians there, very strong state party as well. Let me see, going east here. I mean, there's a strong movement overall in Arizona, although it seems like it's a little bit disorganized right now. New Mexico, we had a great turnout at a college event that was kind of a nice surprise. Nebraska, let's see, Minnesota has a good one. Iowa has a good one. Let's see, Oklahoma has a strong community. Houston and Austin and Texas are great. Louisiana's great. Florida, there are a few different pockets of freedom. Jacksonville, unusually strong for its population size there. I'm leaving out so many. I feel terrible. But Detroit always blows me away because, you think of it as Michigan and Detroit, very statist areas, but they had a huge turnout for us this year and always seem to have a really strong community there. Midwest Peace and Liberty Fest happens there. New Hampshire, of course, always.
Live free or die state.
Well, the Free State Project being there, they always have, just around that, a really great freedom community. Let's see, Maryland was a surprise, great event on this tour as well. So, really, really hard to say. But yeah, those are. Oh, and then Asheville, North Carolina. There's a great community there as well that's centered around homeschooling. So, it's like, it's funny because I don't think I would have been able to point all of these out, not just before going on these tours, but even before that, like, I've done a lot of traveling and I kind of know the national layout of the movement. So it's really cool to think how, like, over the last 5 years, I might have said, there's the Free State Project and there's nothing else really worth noting geographically. 5 years ago, I mean, I'm probably wrong. Someone who wants to do a history of the movement can be way more accurate than me about this, but it's definitely clear to me from my limited anecdotal data, which is pretty darn good, as within our movement, I'd say, having done 2 national tours like this 2 years in a row. The movement feels like it's doubled in the last year overall in size, and it feels like there are way more pockets of freedom and really strong communities of activists. So it's cool. I'm glad you asked that.
No problem. So do you feel, because you said it's significantly increased basically in the last year or two, do you feel that our current or just recently concluded presidential campaign and the fact that it was one of the most polarizing ones that has come in decades, that affected outlook?
I think it definitely has. I hesitate to say in any way that sort of makes it stand out from prior elections or, the general trend of people waking up. You know what I mean? So it might just be, another uptick in the curve, not a particularly special one. And in some ways, it could be described as counterproductive for us because it kind of got people distracted. And I hate to say this, but even with Gary Johnson, someone who is not a philosophical libertarian, I say this as someone who greatly admires him, who endorsed him, and who considers him a friend, but he was not a philosophical libertarian, and he was not able to really pull a lot of libertarians away from Trump even. And Trump was a brilliant candidate. He played a lot of angles. He threw out all the red meat lines, got people excited. I mean, a lot of people were expecting to even do a new investigation of 9/11 just because he's talked around it a little bit. He really became the, all things to all people who he needed to be, who could project onto him. And I mean, that's unfortunately how you win elections in this paradigm right now. But it was a great opportunity, as you point out, to win people over, to grow this movement. And if anything, I don't think we connected in a way because Donald Trump was good at appealing to libertarians in a way that Gary Johnson was not. And because he won, it got people to think that, we have faith in the system that things can change. It might almost be better if Clinton had won and people would be like, oh crap, we're coming off the rails soon because government's going to keep growing. At least now there's the illusion, like when Republicans are elected, they don't shrink government, but they grow it a little bit slower,
Yep. And also, you mentioned the Gary Johnson and the libertarian. On that, did you feel in his home state, which is close to you, in your state and his state of New Mexico, did he do well in that area, in that pocket of the country, in your opinion? With the libertarian?
Yeah, that's not a matter of opinion. If you're asking about turnout, I can't remember the numbers, but yeah, he was a few points higher in New Mexico, I believe.
I just didn't look that up before and I was curious because I knew you were in the area. I did. I'm not done, but I at least did a little bit of growing up when I was in New Mexico. So I was there for high school and ended up running for Congress in New Mexico and lived there. I don't know how many years altogether, but my dad moved there when my freshman year of high school, so I've kind of always had a home in New Mexico, at least since then. Oh, interesting. I don't think I heard you say that part before, so I didn't realize that. And so the other portion, and we have about 5 minutes, and so feel free to take the full 5 minutes if you want to. However, the background, I'm going to kind of reverse it right now, but we talked about what you're doing, where you're going in 2020, and being the first time coming out and doing it as the unpresident. What brought you there? What's the back end of what built you to be where you are now and brought you to this perspective and pushing where you're going with the message?
Well, I don't know how far back you want me to go, but I was always kind of a punk kid, was raised with a healthy disdain for authority. My mother was vaguely liberal. My father was vaguely conservative. And my mom, when we were driving, would give us the choice between classical music or oldies. And I always chose oldies. So now if you put on the radio, like mainstream radio, any mainstream oldie station, I will know the lyrics to at least 90% of the songs. And I will sing along in the car like an idiot. And you better not record if you ever get to witness this. But I think the spirit of the music of the 60s that is now considered, oldies, really was genuinely anti-authoritarian, very rebellious, in a very deep way. And I think that was really the foundation of it for me. But I was a troublemaker. I got in trouble for trying to blow up the boys' bathroom when I was in middle school, and I got kicked out of a high school, and then I enlisted in the Marine Corps, and it was a really interesting experience, to say the least. I was in Fallujah in 2004. I volunteered with the Marine Corps Civil Affairs team and did a 7-month tour with a little bit of combat. And it was a traumatic experience, but at the same time, a wonderful challenge. So I don't want to say that it's like all terrible for me, but I got in trouble for bringing a pistol back as a souvenir that I had purchased from an Iraqi cop through a translator. And so I did a year managing a barracks at Camp Pendleton. It was like, I'm a sergeant who speaks Arabic with civil affairs experience. What are we doing here? Like, I'm supposed to be deployed. And it took them that long to process my case because it was at the time of the Hamdaniya and Aditha incidents that were being investigated by NCIS, and I got bumped down the list because of that. So I sat at Camp Pendleton for a year, and then they gave me a medal for my time in Iraq, a Navy Commendation Medal, the day before they busted me from sergeant to corporal. So when I got out, I was just disgruntled enough to really start questioning things. I called myself a libertarian in high school, but it was only because I didn't want to be a lame Republican or Democrat. I definitely did not know what it meant. It was, socially liberal, fiscally conservative, punk the man. Okay, cool, that's me. I'm not going to be a Republican or Democrat. I'll be a libertarian. And it took me 10 years from that to really understand what it meant. And I had to go to Iraq and back and realize how much, as Major General Smedley Butler said, who, by the way, you learn about in boot camp as the most decorated Marine in military history. You don't learn that he wrote a book afterwards called War is a Racket, in which he described himself as a high-class muscle man for big business. I didn't realize that until I came back and got some perspective. And when I got out of the Marine Corps, I moved to D.C. to get a master's in political management at George Washington University and ended up dropping out just one semester early in order to be a full-time activist with Iraq Veterans Against the War. And I just fell into that and fell into full-time activism, felt really good putting my negative experiences to good, to the cause of peace. But I was still at that point very angry and not very philosophical in my understanding of freedom. So I ran for office as a Republican. I was endorsed by Ron Paul in 2010 and lost the primary. But since I couldn't shut up when the race was over, I got a radio show and a TV show. Oh, and by the way, I should point out, that was a really important time. When I was running for Congress in New Mexico, I read Ethics of Liberty by Murray Rothbard. And that really was the completion of the philosophical process for me. There's the joke, right? What's the difference between a statist and a libertarian? And the answer is, about 6 months. And now, I would say people are waking up faster from everything that I can tell. It's now more like a weekend of watching YouTube videos and reading Wikipedia articles, and they go, oh, okay, I get it. That wasn't so big a deal. But I'm really slow. It took me 10 years from high school to reading this book, Ethics of Liberty by Murray Rothbard, when I was running for Congress. 10 years to realize that freedom was not just a set of political positions or a nice buzzword, but a philosophical concept backed by ethical principles. So,
well, it sounds like all of your experience, however, even though it took you 10 years, you have all of that to fuel your fire now. And I don't want to cut you off, but you did give a nice synopsis that brought it right to. And we are at the end of the show. So again, everybody, this is Adam Kokesh, and he is at thefreedomline.com. And if you want one of our handful of hard copies of his book in the Colors of Politics RI Free Radio studio, make sure to drop us a line. Find us at Colors of RI, Facebook and Twitter. And Adam, feel free to throw out there any other way to get a hold of you, or an email, or whatever you want to put out there for people besides thefreedomline.com.
That's it. If you want to get me, Adam at thefreedomline.com. And just so I don't sound like an idiot from before, when I said I couldn't shut up when the race was over, I got a radio show, then a TV show, and I've been independent online since then, and 55-something million views on YouTube. So it's been great, and it's been awesome to have the support of so many people who have made it possible for me to be a full-time activist now for almost a decade. So thank you all very much.
Thank you for dedicating to what you believe in, and thank you for coming on the show. Thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of Colors of Politics, and we will see you next time.